In this presentation, I'm going to explain the main elements of narrative theory. I'm going to apply this theory to the Lord of the Rings film trilogy. In this video, we will look at props theory, Todorov's theory, and levi-strauss theory. Firstly, I'm going to talk about Vladimir Prop's theory. He was a Soviet folklorist and scholar. Prop analyzed a whole series of Russian folk tales and decided that the same characters keep being repeated in each of the stories. He proposed that it is possible to identify 7 types of characters in most of stories. The first type of character is the hero. This is normally the main character, and they are usually strong and fights against the villain. In The Lord of the Rings, Frodo is the hero. We can also argue that Aragorn is the hero. The second type of character is the villain. They are normally fights against the hero and have some evil plans to rule the world. In The Lord of the Rings, Sauron is the main villain. The third character is the Dona. This character is characterized by giving the hero something to help them prepare for the journey ahead. In The Lord of the Rings, Lady Galadriel is the Dona. She gives Frodo the light of Arendelle. The fourth character is the Dispatcher. They send the hero off on a journey to beat the villain or save the world. In The Lord of the Rings, Lord Elrond is the Dispatcher. He sends Frodo to Mordor to destroy the ring. The fifth character is the false hero. This character believes in helping the heroes, but later on the story he betrays them. In The Lord of the Rings, Saruman is the false hero when he betrays Gandalf. The sixth character is the helper. This character is usually the hero's companion and helps them on their journey. In The Lord of the Rings, Sam is the helper. Also, we can argue that Gimli and Legolas are helpers. The seventh character is the princess. This is usually who the hero is fighting for. In The Lord of the Rings, Arwen is the princess. We can argue this if we say that Aragorn is the hero. Secondly, I'm going to talk about Todorov's theory of equilibrium. He is a literary critic and philosopher. He developed a narrative theory that it says to simplify the idea of narrative, but at the same time it interprets film text in more complexity. The basis of the theory is equilibrium and disequilibrium. Todorov's narrative theory states that most of storylines and plots follow a similar pattern, which consists in 5 key stages. The first stage is equilibrium. This stage is when everything is happy and normal. The atmosphere is very calm and we can have an idea of a normal day in the life of the characters. This happened on the first movie of The Lord of the Rings. The second stage is disruption. This is when something bad happens, which breaks the equilibrium and forces the character to do something. We can see this stage on the first movie of The Lord of the Rings. The third stage is recognition. This stage is when the characters have recognized the disruption and think of something that they are going to do about it to restore the equilibrium. We can see this at the first movie of The Lord of the Rings. The fourth stage is the attempt to repair. This is usually the climax of the film. It's when the characters try to repair the disruption and restore the equilibrium again. In The Lord of the Rings, we can see this along the 3 movies. The final stage is the equilibrium restore. This is when everything returns back to normal again. We can say that this is the happy ending of most of the films. In The Lord of the Rings, we can saw this at the end of the third movie. Lastly, we have the Levi-Strauss theory about binary opposition. Levi-Strauss was a French anthropologist that believes that the human mind thinks fundamentally in this binary opposition. Strauss believes that in language and thought two opposites are defined and set off against one another. So let's have a look of some examples of binary opposition based on the Lord of the Rings films. First, we have good versus evil that can be represented by Gandalf and Sauron. Secondly, we have sane and insane. We can see this with Gollum before and after finding the ring. Then we have life or death. We can see this on the Seven Kings before and after being corrupted by the rings. We can see as well on male versus female when Arwen kills the villain. To conclude with this presentation, I hope to be able to explain in a simple way about narrative theory, specifying the three theories mentioned previously. Also, here you have some reference for each of the theories. Thanks for your attention.